So hello everybody, welcome to the four-part series. It's the final part in Trauma Myths. I'm Carolyn Eberle, licensed professional counselor and founder of the Mind Energy Body School of Transformation, and I'm so excited and thrilled to have you here. I feel so much gratitude to share this time with you and to share my wisdom and everything I've learned over the, let's say more than half a century without totally giving away my age. I'm so happy to welcome licensed professional counselors, social workers, marriage and family counselors, chiropractors, holistic practitioners, massage therapists, doctors, nurses. I welcome all of you, and I'm so excited to help you learn how not to re-traumatize clients, how to prevent rewounding, and how to help them embody the power within so that the pain, the negative patterns, that emotions that can hold them back, the reactivity that can bring us all down gets shifted back to wisdom, wholeness, aliveness, and reconnection with those around us. I'm also really excited to hear that you want to hear how to work an integrated mind, energy, body, modality into one integrated orientation where profound change is not only possible, but is almost ensured as long as you show up for yourself. And I'm so happy to welcome Heather Reed. She is a former student of mine, and she's in a master's in counseling program, and she's going to help me help you get all the information you need to help support your clients and help support yourself. And for those who don't have a private practice and are just here for your own spiritual awakening and your own personal transformation, you are welcome as well. This program can help you deeply and profoundly, and I'm so happy to have you. Don't have a private practice, but you're taking this program and you're listening to this webinar simply for your own benefit. Know that you too are welcome, and that you can receive great wisdom and support along the way. So welcome to you as well, and gratitude to you as well. Now I'd like to introduce Heather Reed. She's a former student, and she's in the process of getting her master's in counseling, school counseling. And she's going to help me share the wisdom, receive the information you need so that your life is improved and you can better support clients as well. Hey, Heather, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. And my name's Heather, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about my background and how I came to Carolyn. I was a long-time meditator. I practiced Zen meditation for 20 years, and during that time, I was very specifically taught that a feeling is healing through different programs and by my teachers, and it wasn't until I just had re-traumatized myself over and over, and I realized that things weren't working for me, that I happened to meet Carolyn at a workshop. And for me, it was like waking up to a whole new world, because although I had experienced many things through meditation, I felt like the mind, energy, body system was finally speaking to what was happening with me. And it gave me an understanding of, why was I still suffering? Why wasn't this modality working for me? So worked with Carolyn for a while, but finally realized the 5-step process and learning the 5 skills, and just coming back again to the teachings of the school in order to not re-traumatize myself and to, I would say, just have wonderful, happy relationships and, just wonderful things in my life.
Right, you got divorced and remarried, right?
Yes, I did.
That was a positive process too.
Yeah.
You found the right man, and
and I also just had to leave, codependent relationships behind as I kept stepping into my wholeness more and more. I just realized, these unhealthy patterns of behavior, and could really heal past traumas rather than living them out over and over again. So I'm really excited to be here today and to help Carolyn move her teachings out from Colorado into the whole world. So before we get started, please just get comfortable. If you'd like to grab a pen and paper in order to take notes, because there's going to be a lot of information in the next hour or so. And make sure you stay all the way to the end so that you can see about special offers at the end of the video and to get all of the information possible. So first of all, I wanted to ask about self-judgment and self-criticism. And so how does your system of change help people deal with the trauma of emotional pain and when we get stuck, in those places of self-judgment and self-criticism?
Great question. So I think it's really important to focus on the fact that we are in this physical form. We're spiritual beings, but we do have this brain. We do have a midbrain and amygdala. And we do have an ego that gets interactive with the midbrain. And a lot of clinicians, we learned something called positive ego resourcing to deal with those self-judgments. And I don't do ego resourcing. I feel the ego is strong enough, it's reactive enough, it tends to say you're better than, or blame, or it says you're less than. And what I teach is, I teach people to anchor into their true self, their core being, their spiritual wholeness. I call it core being. And I teach them to do that in a way that through the 5 steps and the spiritual laws, they can melt away those self-judgments. They can rewire their brain's reactivity to go to those negative places and come back to their wholeness.
Yeah, one of the things that I really experienced through meditation is that there's so many spiritual modalities that talk about a no self. And it actually became very confusing to me, because how was my no self supposed to help me heal this trauma that I was going through? So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, the no self versus, the positive self concept, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that come from that background.
Right. So one of the reasons why I developed this work is because that no self concept was not working for so many people. It takes incredible strength and a high level of spiritual awareness and higher consciousness to actually be able to be in that oneness all the time when difficulty happens. So I find, just like my 2-year-old son at the time had a transitional blanket, that when he went to playgroup, I could put my energy into his blanket and he'd feel close to me, when he was in play school. We need at least a transitional object of knowing who your true self is, who your core being is. So you know where to return to. You need that map back to wholeness. So I don't do ego resourcing. I don't ask people to self-identify from their ego energetic perspective, because it runs at a much lower vibrational rate, and we can talk more about the energy and vibration of ego versus core being. But if you know who you are, you know where you're going to return to.
Yeah, so does everyone have spiritual wholeness? And if you're Buddhist or Christian or Jewish or just identify as spiritual, which a lot of people do nowadays, will this program fit them and meet their needs?
Absolutely. I define spiritual wholeness as an essence within you that can be embodied, can be incarnated, can be brought into the physical body, that mirrors the wholeness that God, Source, use whatever name you want. It's the place of returning to whatever way you define wholeness and spirituality, a place of returning to the wholeness, to the embodying of that core being, that truth that is closer to resonating at that source God consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So in your experience with all the clients that you've seen over the years, what is their biggest obstacle to realize their core being and their bigger self, and then making that shift? Because I think a lot of people, all they know is ego, or all they know is defense. So what is the biggest obstacle, and then how do you help them make that shift?
Right. I call it it's when they can differentiate and individualize from the negative emotions and the programming of the past, the programming of their brain, body, and ego. So at the Newtonian, getting into quantum physics, getting into the physical level, in Newtonian physics, everything is solid. So if you feel sadness, you are sad. If you are physically hurt, you are hurt. But if you bring it into, if your ego is damaged, you are damaged. But if you bring it into the quantum and spiritual reality, everything is really just particles of energy. When I meditate, everything turns into particles. It's not really solid. And so when you feel a negative emotion, a negative belief, if you can feel it as an energetic construct and not something that defines you, your value, your sense of self, if there's that detachment and differentiation, then you can be the wholeness, shifting the difficulty, the negative belief, the emotional pain, the trauma, back to wholeness at that quantum level. Yeah, and the training really teaches you how to do that. It teaches you a new perspective of seeing the world as just energetic constructs and templates and blueprints, that a fabric, a reality that can actually change back to a higher reality, one that mirrors your higher sense of self, one that mirrors your highest good.
So a big part of helping clients is just enabling them to have that shift in perspective.
Yes. It's probably the biggest challenge that clinicians will face, and yet the most rewarding. And it does take time. It does take little time to keep. There's this place of profound forgetting that Barbara Brennan, somebody I studied with, and you can go to that place of, who am I? Profound forgetting. So it takes practice, and it takes self-love and kindness. Yeah.
Okay, so I know in previous videos we've talked about the biological consciousness container, which I actually find a fascinating subject myself. So I was just going to ask you to talk a little bit more about that, and then also what role it plays in fostering either pain or helping to make that shift.
Right.
So
a lot of people get frustrated because they say, well, I tried to change, but I'm not changing. I feel stuck. I'm not changing. And what they aren't taught and what they aren't trained to do is you can't change if your brain doesn't change. You can't change if you don't change the physiology that caps your level of consciousness to the current level. Like Einstein used to say, you can't solve the problem with the same consciousness that created it. Well, I take it into the biological consciousness container. You can't change unless you change the biology. Or a common saying is neurons that fire together, wire together. So you need a system that helps you create new neural pathways in the brain, in the body, the biochemicals, the neurotransmitters, even the DNA has to shift to a higher consciousness. So you need a system that rewires the brain and body systems as well as the energy systems that hold the lower consciousness in place. And so in the training you learn a lot about how to uncap that biological consciousness container, create a higher level of consciousness by rewiring it in your mind, energy, and body systems.
cool. So in one of the videos, you talk about the difference between process work,
Right.
which is, I would say, traditional psychotherapeutic techniques, and that is what I'm mainly learning in my master's, is what we would call process work, versus what you do, which you call transformation work. And I think this is really important, especially for all the other practitioners out there and all the other psychotherapists and people working with clients. So yeah, why don't we talk a little bit about that myth of the process work? And
Yeah, so just as processed food pulls out all the nutrition. Okay, sometimes I eat processed food, but I try to eat whole food. Process work can actually keep that biological consciousness container capped. because unless you change the energetic frequency of your sense of self, unless you change the actual neural network and wiring in your brain and how your neurotransmitters and your body works in relationship to the ego, to the limbic system, they talk about neurobiologists and brain scientists, and in the training we talk a lot about the brain science of transformation. There's the executive functions of the brain, the top-down version, but there's also this bottom-up primal limbic response system that can hold us back. And with process work, you may get the executive functions of the brain, the top-down functions where you are like, yes, I shouldn't yell at my husband just because he doesn't pick up his underwear. There's probably a better way of dealing with that situations, but what happens is the limbic system, you go limbic, and the bottom-up system takes over, and it makes change hard. So when a client comes in, I say, what are you going to transform today? And we work on not only the top-down systems, but the primal response systems so that they are rewired. And you actually change at that cellular level, at that energetic level, a new sense of self, a higher frequency. So the Newtonian perspective of process work is everything solid. Well, if you change at the deepest constructs of the particles of energy, you can transform both the top-down and the bottom-up system.
Okay.
Is that too technical? Does that make sense?
No, I think we could talk a little bit about, just explain how you teach people then to feel emotions that's different than what maybe they've learned in the past. So, and I think it's really important to talk about the preventing of the rewounding.
Right.
You know, so we could talk maybe just specifically about the emotional part of what you teach clients.
This is my favorite topic. I vowed my life passion is to prevent people from being abused by their emotions, abused by the challenges in life. I had a client that was like, life is just too hard. And I want to invite you, yes, hardness can show up, but I want to invite you to connect to those emotions and life challenges as that quantum level of energetic template that can actually shift to wisdom and wholeness. So instead of, I am sad, what if you said, wow, there's this energy of sadness moving through me. It's wow, I feel it in my third chakra, I feel it in my belly, and wow, it makes me feel no good. What if that was an energetic construct versus I'm no good? That creates a little detachment, little space, space so you can identify as core being, shifting the energy of the pain.
Okay, so what do you find in clients? What are the most difficult emotions to transform? Because I think there's a gradient of emotional experience. So
and this
good
is
to talk about.
This is pretty important because I find that it's actually really important. I find that there are 3 emotions that are hardest to transform, and 2 of the emotions, if you can transform them, all the other emotions get easier to transform. So shame can hold you back. If you feel shame, it can hold that biological cap in place and keep you from embodying that wholeness. Victim consciousness is another one. If you feel you're a victim, then you can't have the detachment and the space, the breath needed to transform the energy of victim. So I encourage you to say, oh wow, the energy of shame, not I'm shame. The energy of victim consciousness. And then the third emotion that's hard is fear and anxiety. It's so primal. And I have a special way of, that special way of dealing with fear and anxiety that people will learn in the training program. But a hint of how to do that is, if your primal brain is collapsing, you need some charge, some anger to help shift that primal response of freeze and flight to, wow, problem solving. How do I shift it? How do I detach from it? So those are the three emotions that are most difficult to change, and we really address that in the full training program, the 14-module training program.
And I think it's good just to talk a little bit that you often mention that pain and these challenges are the energetic portal back to wholeness. And I found that to be just a real positive way to view the energies and the emotions while they're happening. You know, that this is just another energetic portal. So maybe you could talk about that just a little bit.
Right. So in the training, you learn something called the 3 rings of healing. The outer ring is defense. You can't transform from defense. So negative, unhealthy defenses, such as blame, shame, victim consciousness, collapse, attack, denial. There's a million energetic defenses as well that you'll learn about. And then the ring, that's the outer ring, and the next ring in is the actual pain. And there's a magical way to learn how to feel that emotion, feel that pain in a way where that energy shifts in the mind and body as a sensation in the mind, as a belief, as a sensation in the body, as a belief in the mind, and as an energetic construct in both the mind and body. There's a way to feel that pain that shifts, and it brings you deeper than you ever would believe of coming into that core being, creating an anchor. So the actual, I really do believe God, source, whatever you want to call it, created these painful moments for us to almost wormhole, tunnel, transform back to reclaim our wholeness. They're the pathway back, the energetic conduit to embody more of your wholeness. As you learn that special way, how to not be overwhelmed by the pain.
Yeah, so besides the defenses, are there other things that prevent the transformation from happening, or is it pretty much just that outer, everything's in that outer ring?
Well, it's how you deal with the middle ring, the actual feeling.
Okay, yeah. So
whether you disassociate from it, which I call, a lot of people do, I call it spiritual junk food. They're like, oh, it's not there.
okay.
Or they're like, I'm just going to love myself. And yes, you have to love yourself. You have to be kind to yourself. But unless you actually access the pain, just like you can't move a glass unless you touch a glass. You have to actually touch the pain. But if you touch it too much and you become the pain and your sense of self is defined by the pain, then you lose your ability for energetic transformation.
So is this where people are going to learn about the 5 steps and the energy and mindfulness skills? Because once you get past the defenses, then you need to have the tools to work with the pain.
Right. So spiritual law number 1, you learn the 5 steps, 5 skills, and 5 spiritual laws. Spiritual law number 1 is your sense of self creates your reality. So the step to implement spiritual law 1 is, are you in your wounded self, more traumatized ego self, or are you in your higher sense of self? Are you in your core being? So in order to implement spiritual law number 1 and create your reality from your best self, your bigger self, you've got to at least be aware. And the skill to implement step 1, I call it the explorer's mind. And I developed the explorer's mind when I was actually on a mountaintop in Nepal. And it's a long story, but basically I had no food or water, and it was starting to snow, and I was at 18,000 feet. And I was like, I could collapse or I could get curious on how to solve this problem. And my curiosity versus my overwhelm, that inner detective that gave me some space to go, oh, why is this perfect? Allowed me to then survive the night. Yeah. And then step 2 goes with spiritual law 2. Spiritual law 2 is that emotions and negative challenges are just energetic constructs. And to implement that, you learn energetic techniques to detach, to have positive intention, which is the skill to implement step 2 of detachment, to then do step 3, which is, can you name, own, and claim that lower vibration of pain that is holding you back? And can you find where it's held in the physical body and in the energy system? And then the skill to implement step 3 is that choice point. Don't you love that choice point?
I do.
It's not always easy to implement. So each of the spiritual laws are aligned with the actual skill and the step to implement it until full transformation happens and you reconnect to your core being.
Okay, and I think this is I've heard you discuss the concept of being kind to your human, and I think this really relates to working through these steps. So maybe you could talk about how being kind to your human is so vital to the transformation process.
Right. So if your limbic system is engaged, it shuts down the executive functions of the brain, and there's no space, there's just overwhelm. And you become the hardness, and you can't transform it. So enough self-love actually creates an anchor strong enough to transform the pain, remembering that we are really spiritual wholeness. And as we self-identify as that spiritual wholeness, sending love to our human aspects that can feel lost and overwhelmed, that's the core of transformation. That's the core of self-mastery. And we really spend a lot of time in these 14 modules developing that skill in our daily lives. Because it can't be just in the therapy session or just in the video that you watch for the training. It's got to be a system I found over the years. It's got to be a system I can use throughout my day. And that's what we do for you.
Okay, so I'm gonna be asking some more, relating some more questions that people had in the comment sections. But did you want to talk a little bit about the 14 modules and how to sign up for
Sure.
the transformation training? Because I'm here in Colorado, which is such a blessing. So I've been able to receive these teachings in person. But a lot of your motivation was to get this out to the wider audience, to really provide this transformation work for the whole world, which can now be done with all the new technologies. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
So each module will have a video, it will have evidence-based research, even scientific articles, as well as practical exercises that you can take and practice throughout the week in between each module. So there'll be one module a week.
Okay.
You don't have to spend a lot of time on the computer. You can go at your own rate. You can do it on your iPhone. I know a lot of people like to do it in between clients or when they have a break on their iPhone, read a little. And there's really no risk involved, because for the first 30 days, the first month, you get 100% guarantee that if it's not for you, I will give you your full refund back. So if you're a licensed professional counselor, if you're a marriage and family counselor, if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're a holistic practitioner, if you're a massage therapist, or somebody that just wants to awaken, improve their life, improve their family, improve their relationships, and really get tangible add-on benefits. As you know, a lot of the students end up having a bigger private practice. A lot of the students that graduate from the program improve their relationships, improve their relationship with their career. They find their due north. They find their way within themselves and within the world. So there are a lot of add-on benefits as well. And yeah,
and I know also that you're going to provide coaching calls. You call it for people, which I think is really cool, because I think people do need to be able to absorb the information, but when questions come up, or if they're working on their own personal transformation, you are going to provide coaching calls.
Yeah, every other week there'll be a coaching call, and in the comment section, people will be able to ask questions. There'll be a closed Facebook group for only people who are involved in the 14 module
that's
program.
Really That's
and
great.
they can interact, and I can respond almost immediately to questions that are really important as well. Yeah.
So when I first started the MEB training, one of my biggest concerns was being able to sense energy, and not just sensing it, but also being able to track energy in others. And I would say probably 90% of the groups that I've seen have that same concern, because I mean, occasionally you have someone who is really psychic and they're actually, you know, they're tracking and sensing energy already pretty well, or they're working as an energy healer already. But a lot of people, you know, I think that's one of the first big worries that might come up
Right.
with this. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you help people overcome that hurdle.
I find that's the easiest skill that I teach people because, believe it or not, you're all already sensing and tracking energy. You're all responding to the energy around you, and some of you may remember walking into a room and just feeling unsettled. That's the energy you're sensing. Or some people you just want to turn your back and walk away from because you're sensing how they're running their energy. So that's actually the easiest skill that I get to teach people, is just help confirm what they're already doing. And get the ego out of the way. That's the other obstacle. It's they have this ego and belief system that it's hard. I've had a lot of meditation teachers tell me, "Oh, you can't sense energy. It takes years of study." And actually it doesn't, especially with all these high energies in the world today. It's the easiest skill.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the subtle energy and how it relates to that brain's reactivity, because we don't want to get too technical, but I think it's good for people watching this video to understand, you know, how does that, you know, make the transformation possible? How do those two go together?
Great question. So energy is the medium that connects the mind with the body, right? So energy can vibrate at low vibrational consciousness, such as anxiety, sadness. I find people can really label what the low vibrational consciousness is in their life.
Yeah.
Negative self-talk, repetitive nightmares even, you know, PTSD, depression, anxiety, mania, all those are examples of low vibrational consciousness. And this is like really important and something I'm very passionate about. There is high vibrational consciousness, and the only thing that keeps us from enlightenment and embodying that high vibrational consciousness is we get in our own way. And so what I teach is I teach you to connect to the positive belief, the positive emotions, the positive sense of self, that anchor into your core being, and that HVC, the high vibrational consciousness, melts the LVC, the low vibrational consciousness. The example I give is I show students paint, white paint, right? And if the white paint represents the high vibrational consciousness, then I'll put some black paint in there, and that represents the pain. And if there's enough white paint, when you mix the two together, it transforms. So when your mind, and this is my new take on mindfulness too, when your mind resonates at that high vibrational consciousness and it comes into the body and it feels the pain and the negative emotion, it shifts it. And that's how transformation happens fundamentally. It's simple, not easy. You know, we do walk you through each module, building your skills so that you can embody the gift.
And I want
The secret.
And I want to make it clear that maybe you could talk about this. We're not talking about spiritual junk food, because people do need to feel our pain and feel our wounding, but it's not about the feeling is healing or the processing it or re-traumatizing it. And so maybe talk a little bit about that, and especially from the clinician's point of view, you know, helping clients, because I think a lot of clients can, you know, get lost in the pain, or they do the spiritual junk food.
Right.
So, you know.
So I teach this concept, as you know, it's called holding two places at once. And once you have, I call them superpower skills, but it really just takes practice of being able to be the light in the darkness, holding your sense of self as core being while feeling the pain. That holding two places at once is vital. It's learning how to connect to the pain from the identity of your wholeness. So if a client comes in and they're collapsing into their pain, let's just say, a pet died. I mean, that's one real common tragedy, that they're already dysregulated. They're already lost in their emotional pain. I actually have them stand and do physical exercises to shift the lower vibrational consciousness in their body, to have their energy field bigger than the pain, so that they can then shift the pain back to power. That holding two places at once, in the 14 modules, you'll learn multiple ways to develop that skill and help your clients develop that skill. And with videos to help you too. Does that answer it enough?
It does.
So if I'm a clinician and my client is collapsed in the pain, I will have taught them some basic skills on who they really are, and not to self-identify as the pain in this step-by-step process. And so clients now, when they come in, this is what I want to transform today, not what I want to just regurgitate over and over again. This is what I want to shift. This is the power I want to embody.
Okay. Well, that goes right into my next question, because I think we all have seen clients or just have people in our lives, and maybe sometimes ourselves at different points in our lives, we just get really stuck where there's just so much trauma, or maybe a deeper level of like a personality disorder,
right.
or something along those lines that just really keep people from moving forward. And so maybe you could talk, a little bit about, in here we talk about some character structures and just different ways to help people get out of this stuck, the stuck place. The box, yeah.
I will teach you a lot about the body-centered character structures that William Reich helped develop years ago. One of the body-centered character structures, which I call the heart-centered, because they're very loving, but they can get stuck in the box where when you try and help them, it doesn't work, and they'll attack back. No, that doesn't work. No, not that. No, that doesn't solve the problem. And helping them to self-identify as the place that they're holding, and that, wow, this is the box. Even identifying it as the box helps shift the box. Yeah. And reminding them of who they really are. They're not the box. That's just the energy to transform.
So I think it's good at this point to talk more about that objective observer concept, because sometimes you say in here it's not always the healing option, but I think it's really important to emphasize that both for ourselves and for clients too.
Right. So in a lot of mindfulness and meditation practices, they talk about the objective observer, but from an energetic perspective, when you're observing something, you can quickly lose the high vibration. I mean, really, let's just get down to the core of it. The objective observer's task in meditation and mindfulness is to create that detachment, that space, that pause. But what we really need is an enlightened observer. And that's one of the skills, that skill 4 that you learn. That enlightened observer, that good enough, loving energy that can say, wow, you're not that pain. It creates a space between you and the pain. Because too often our mind will resonate at a higher vibration than the pain, but as we objectively feel it, we go to that profound forgetting place. We lose ourselves. So I teach you the skill and the energetics behind an enlightened observer. It creates a positive, secure adult attachment, if you want to talk about it in clinical terms. It's the comfortable blanket that I used to give my son when he couldn't support himself when he'd go to play school and he didn't have mom sending him love. There are times, let's be honest, there are times when the pain is so much that we can't have our own backs. And so I teach you to embody the consciousness of that enlightened observer source energy, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, whatever you want to embody it, so that your mind can resonate at a high enough frequency to create that pause, that space, and create transformation.
What I found through the meditation training I received, they often talk about non-judgment and to have that detached observer, but it never had the quality of like a loving and compassionate presence. It made a lot of detachment, but it didn't have that positive emotion, to it.
Right, and that is so vital toward embodiment. Life can be harsh. And in those harsh times, that's when we need that loving support. And if we can't send ourselves love, if we can't, I call it being kind to our human, we can at least call upon and have the skill of receiving that wholeness, that support that is really around us. And we can learn how to bring it in, that spiritual support.
And I think this leads very naturally to my experience also was, so then I would cultivate that detachment and all this stuff would come up, but then I wouldn't know what to do with it, right? I'd be like, oh, well, there's that same old trauma or pain or whatever, but then I literally would just never have any idea of what. So there it was, but what on earth do I do now? I was just kind of left there, right? Because obviously the feeling, it was not transforming it. So, when someone doesn't know about working somatically through the body, and if they don't know about energy, how do you help that beginning client to embrace the body-centered energy and the mindfulness skills that you teach? Because I think there's a lot of people who are probably at that point. I mean, for whatever experience they've had in the past, but they just, how do you teach those beginning clients? I mean, what's that next?
That's a great
step,
question.
right?
That's really, and it's also the question of how do you teach them to embody their core being?
Because there's people
right?
that have tried meditation and they fail at the meditation, or they've tried, different therapy modalities, and it just doesn't seem like things are working for them. So, what do you do with the beginning client there?
Yeah, I tried meditation when I was 14, and it didn't work because it was all in the mind. It was a mantra-based meditation when I was 14, and because it didn't have the grounding of working through the body and feeling sensations in the body, I got lost. And because I didn't know what was going on energetically, so in the training and when I work with clients, I teach them how to sense what's going on. There's so much. I had a meditation teacher once tell me, if you're bored, you're not aware of what's there. So a lot of people just get bored because they're not aware of what's there. But once you open to that energetic perspective, once you can feel the sensations in the body, and you can know who you really are, that map back to core being. So that's where I begin. I begin to help them know who they really are. What does that energy feel as a sensation and an emotion in the body? In the training, you learn how to assess your chakras, how to assess different energetic dimensions, how to do something called the body connecting sequence. How do you feel sensations in the body? And all that I teach over time with clients.
Yeah, it works too. Throw that out there. So in the comment section, there was a lot of people just talking about aggressive reactivity, and even being innerly aggressive to themselves, or overreactions to their partners, to their husbands and wives. And there's a lot of people that'll have clients that do that, or they do that themselves. So how does your system really support people?
First of all, I tell them it's not their fault. It's not their fault, it's not your fault, but it's your problem to solve. I call that when you go limbic. I had one clients say, why do I scream at my husband when he doesn't take out the trash? I mean, I'm not going to die if he doesn't take it, but I scream at him like bloody murder. Or another client is like, I get so jealous of my husband and there's no reason for it. And I just, he comes in 5 minutes late and I'm like, why didn't you call? I know you were, checking porn online, or you're yelling, you're having a date, or you're lingering with somebody in Whole Foods. And I just really assure it's not their fault, because that bottom-up system, that brain system of going limbic and the primal response system will take over because we are human. But you can learn how to rewire that system so it's less reactive. So that the inner bitch, be it a guy bitch or a girl bitch, is something that is normal, yet it can be healed, it can be rewired. That biological cap can be raised to embody a healthier way when your husband's a little late, or when the jealousy or negative feelings come up.
Okay. So let's see here. So why don't we talk a little bit, something just maybe a little bit more personal, just like a personal question of your own journey. I mean, you've gone through some deep developmental and emotional trauma in your life, and that was kind of your impetus to start your own healing journey.
Sure.
And then to reach this point where you're actually, teaching the teachers and helping others with their own healing journey. So
before I talk about that, let me just remind everybody that it is a limited time that you can sign up for this program.
Oh, okay.
And I want to encourage you guys to sign up. You can press the button below. The space is limited, and we won't have registration open for long. And so if you are a practitioner working with clients today, if you're a nurse, a doctor, if you are a licensed professional counselor, a holistic practitioner, or if you're somebody that just wants awakening, I encourage you to sign up now. I am providing this energy transformation to you and for you, and it's really a pleasure and an honor of mine to make it open worldwide. And I really want to encourage you to sign up now. There are 14 different modules. I do provide an energetic transmission of the work to you, so you don't have to travel to Colorado to learn from me. And so that you can learn directly from me. I am the master. I am the one that created this program, and there is no other place you can get it from, and I'm honored to create this opportunity for you. It's been a real journey to try and present this material online, and I really hope you can sign up now, take advantage of it before the registration closes. So now to get back to your question.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people it's not, they want it to be personal.
Yeah. So I was adopted. When I was 14, I told you I did my first meditation class. I was kind of a spiritual junkie. I read self-growth books, Carlos Castaneda, all sorts of books ever since I was really, really young. And I think it's because I had so much trauma as a child. I had an alcoholic father, a codependent family, a lot of abuse, and I created it a mission. I decided one day I'm not going to be a victim. I'm tired of being a victim. I'm tired of collapsing. I want to embrace my spiritual wholeness. I want to find a system, a secret code, as my students call it, as the pathway that this emotional challenge that we feel and can't avoid in our life, our emotional reactivity, our self-judgments that we can't avoid, wow, it can become a pathway back to wholeness. No more should you be abused by your emotions? And I really want people to get that there's so much more than what they think they are. And that this world, this earthly dimension for their clients and themselves, for their family and their loved ones, can become a playground with just a little bit of self-mastery, just a little bit of skills that they can use throughout their day to shift the emotional pain, to shift that dysregulation and reclaim their wholeness.
So you've been married for 30 years, and you also have two 20-something children that you're helping move into adulthood, which is a
Yes.
big transition. So I think a lot of people are like, wow, everything's going really great for you. I mean, do you ever worry or stress or feel less than, or are you like in this enlightened state all the time? You're always working, your energy and, doing transformation. I think it's really important for people to know the answer to this because there are a lot of spiritual teachers out there and energy healers who portray themselves as, oh, I'm fully enlightened, I never do anything wrong.
I never anger anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm always a little distrustful of when I see something like that because it just, right? There's a lot of claims by people, so.
You're absolutely right. I am enlightened. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, of course I have anger, I have reactivity. As long as we have an amygdala, limbic system, a human body, we're going to have challenge. But, I have this new definition of enlightenment. I used to have a lot of clients come in and say, I'm working with you to become enlightened. And I'm like, well, what is your definition of enlightenment? And my definition of enlightenment, can you self-assess when you've lost your wholeness? And do you know the pathway back home? And so on some level, I can assess, I would say at least 85, 95% of the time, wow, I'm not in my wholeness. And I may not instantly come back, but I know how to return. And that's what this core program is about, is I found what, you guys call the secret code to shift and assess and come back to my wholeness. And isn't that really what life is about? It's not about being perfect. It's not about being without self-judgment or self-criticism or say you never ever get angry. It's about being able to catch it quicker and return back to wholeness and wisdom and higher consciousness quicker.
So what is the key issue that you find really prevents people from experiencing joy and success in their life? Because we've talked about that. I mean, you've worked with people that have had even immense monetary success, or they're famous, or but what if someone just feels completely unlovable? Can you talk about why this is the case?
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure. So in my book Explorers Mind, A Map to Freedom, I talk a lot about this. If you don't know who you are, you don't know who to return to. So if I have money and fame, and if my children are perfect, I can still feel unsettled and empty inside. And what this program helps you do is it helps you find a place of home within you. Find a place of bliss that is there, whether your parents were perfect, whether your kids are perfect, whether you make a ton of money or not. And honestly, from that place of home and wholeness, you can be the light in the darkness of life's overwhelm. You can feel joy. And so for those famous people, I help them find home within them so that they can actually feel joyful and whole, even though they're famous, or especially because they're famous. Yeah.
So in the training videos, you talk a lot about holding two places at once, and that is really the tipping point for people and for clients in this program. And so how fast does that happen for people, would you say? Or does it happen quickly, or is that something that people, it takes a while to get to that tipping point?
Yeah, I guess one of my pet peeves is programs that say, oh, you'll never have another negative belief after this weekend. And what I want to help people do is learn that skill of holding two places at once, because there will be negative beliefs, there will be life challenges to deal with. And it does take some time to create that rewiring of the brain and body system, to raise that energetic consciousness container, that biological cap, to the level that when life shows up, you're differentiated, detached. You have the skills to use it and see that one of the spiritual laws I teach is things happen for you, not to you. But it takes, on average, I would say about a year of practice, It's only a year. Imagine it took 20, 30, 40 years to develop the challenges and the negative patterns. Only a year of concerted, just practicing the system and really embodying it. And then when life screws up, you can be that light in the darkness. You can hold your light, your self-identity of core being, shifting at that quantum level, the reality to a higher vibration. So things happen for us, not to us.
So in a more clinical viewpoint, what are your trauma do's and don'ts? Because I think this is one of the gifts of the program of transformation is that you have a real trauma protocol. And let's just talk more about that.
So yeah, I have real specific trauma do's and don'ts. And, if you go to the website, mindenergybody.org, you can download a free handout on this. But basically, fundamentally, what we're talking about, if your energy system is big and then it shrinks to feel the pain, you don't have any room to transform. You have to keep your energy bigger than the emotional trauma and pain. And you have to learn how to teach your client how to have enough HVC, enough of that metaphorical white paint in your mind, energy, and body system, so when they go into the pain, they don't shrink and collapse and become it, or create a negative defense around feeling it, or do spiritual junk food. So that's the core of the trauma to do and don'ts. Do not over-identify as the pain. Use it as a portal back to wholeness.
And let's talk about then how your program addresses addiction, self-harming. There's so many addictive behaviors now: sex addiction, love addiction, chemical addiction, alcoholism, smoking, email, Facebook addiction.
Our whole country is addicted to something.
Right, that's what it seems like. So how do you address this issue in your program?
In fundamental terms, it's like we need to attach to something externally. Something externally has to feed our sense of self and our ego and create a positive ego. So we use sex or love or TV or emails, Facebook, whatever it is. And so I teach you to securely attach to your wholeness, to fill up that emptiness so that your vibration is higher, so that you no longer want the addiction. It's not about discipline. Because of the brain and the dopamine and how addiction works biochemically in the body, you've got to have a higher level of consciousness. Like Einstein says.
They say that addictions is one of the hardest things to treat for mental health professionals, and they have addiction counselors. And it's just people will go many, many times and just fall off the wagon, in a sense, again and again with these addictions.
So if your sense of self doesn't change to a higher vibration of knowing who you are, you're not going to change the addiction. Like Spiritual Law 1. You have to embody a new essence, a new consciousness. And that energetic template of going back to the old negative bias, the old negative default of the brain has to be rewired in all mind, energy, and body systems. That's why I created this more integrated approach, working somatically, working with mindfulness, working cognitively and energetically to shift things in this holistic system.
So leading to the next question, why and how did you develop this very specific work? And what are your qualifications for teaching it? Because it is a very comprehensive program. And so I think it's good to talk, kind of how and why you came to this, and then the qualifications to teach this work to
Right,
the
right.
wider audience of people?
Fundamentally, I'm a nerd. I have studied Reiki, Healing Touch. I was a teacher trainee graduate at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. I have my licensed professional counselor degree. I've studied somatic therapies, trauma therapies, brain science, equine psychotherapy, which that's another topic someday we'll discuss. I have studied meditation ever since I was 14, and mostly I've discovered how to heal myself. And so this program is really good for those who want to first work with themselves, first heal and transform themselves. And through learning what worked and what didn't work, when I went to a healer or a therapist or what meditation, I created what does work. Yeah.
I would say, speaking to the program that I'm in now for my master's in counseling, they do not cover doing the personal work. I mean, they mention it, oh, it's good to do the personal work, right? Or to be under
But there's
supervision.
not a container for that.
But there's not a container for that. So I feel like there are so many, counselors, other mental health practitioners. I mean, anybody, they have to do the personal work in order to benefit their clients. So, So what are the mental health challenges and maybe we just call it the emotional challenges that you're going to address in this opportunity?
So it's so comprehensive. I'm so excited about this. And it does really bring you through each skill, develops and builds upon the next, so that you can learn how to deal with depression. You can learn how to deal with anger issues. You can use anger as a way of reclaiming your empowerment, your spiritual wholeness. Now there's an oxymoron, right? You can develop secure adult attachment. We talk about object relations theory. We talk about the brain science of neuroplasticity. We talk about the energetics of entrainment. And we talk about, let's see what else. Gosh, there's so much. Neuroplasticity, polyvagal theory about trauma. We talk about dorsal vagal and ventral vagal tone and the nerdy aspects, but we ground it into daily practice. As I said, there's a video with the transmission. You learn how to work your energy system. You learn how to work somatically through the body. You learn the energetics of mindfulness. So you're not abused by your meditation practice. You're not abused by negative emotions. And what's so cool is that if you're on the fence, there's really no risk involved. If you find out this isn't for you for some reason, you can get your money back. So I really want to make it so that, those holistic practitioners, those people who want to embody more of their light and wholeness, that want to make life easier for themselves, so that if you're a licensed professional counselor, if you're a social worker, if you're a doctor or nurse, this can be the program to help you to your next level. It can be the missing piece, as what a lot of people say.
So this is a certification program if you complete all the 14 modules.
It's a pre-certification if you do just the online part. Good question.
Oh, okay.
And it's an actual certification program if you do 4 days in person in addition. So you get to meet me in person too if you want to get the full certification. And otherwise it's a pre-certification. And please ask us about continuing ed credits and all of that. I'm in the process of trying to make that happen for you if that's what you need.
Well, I just feel so much gratitude to have been able to work with you during this time in my school and also to have been your student.
Yeah, it will transform your life the way it's transformed so many other people's lives. And I'm sending you love and kindness along the way. I look forward to staying in touch. Blessings.